Mr. Primetime, we got the New York Jets cuts. How are you on this Labor Day weekend?
I'm hanging in there, man. Cut down day. Usually try not to overreact to this time because we know there's going to be plenty of moves over the next,
Yeah.
24 hours with, a lot of waiver claims. But definitely a few surprises today, though.
Yeah, well, the first thing you got to think about is the Jets have like 5 or 6 guys that are planning to go to injured reserve. Jeff Smith, Vincent Smith, Owasier, all these guys. So that's 5 or 6 roster spots right there that can change. A lot of moving parts.
Yep.
The practice squad is 16 guys, and it's a mix. It's not like it used to be where you can have veterans on there as well. So there's a lot of moving parts. But yeah, there's some surprises, dude. Some ones I shook my head. Some things that the roster jockeying they're going to do is going to be annoying as shit, which we'll talk about as well. But we'll start because this can probably be a long video, and I'm loaded up with I got my drinks ready. So
Let's go.
I get the backups for this video. So I guess what we do is we'll start with corners.
Yep.
So we'll do that. You look at the roster. I guess the obvious surprise. Well, Bryce Hall, obviously, this is a lost year for him. Tons of talent. Hasn't been healthy. Had COVID. He's out to week 7. Not really much to expect out of him, I think.
Well, we kind of thought the same thing about Bless Austin last year, and then he came on a little bit towards the end. So, obviously it sucks that he hasn't really been involved in training camp. I know Bless, he started practicing a little bit towards the end last year, but, you hope that at the very least towards the end of the season he can get back healthy and, see some reps. But
yeah, and you hope, so like Bless Austin's coming on, a guy they feel very confident about. Nate Hairston was cut, which was interesting to me. I found that interesting. Your thoughts on that?
Well, that one didn't surprise me because if you saw the tweet that I posted earlier, after Jonathan Harrison got cut, I was looking at the roster. He was supposed to make $2.25 million. It was non-guaranteed. And there's been all these reports, how the Jets are strapped financially. They need some extra cash. They still have $30 million in cap space. So the next guy up, right below Jonathan Harrison, was Nate Hairston. He's making about $2.5 million, something like that, non-guaranteed. And you have a couple other undrafted free agents who I thought were going to make the roster with Carter, Lamar Jackson, and Javelin Guidry, who had the 4.2940. Yeah, rare speed. All 3 of them got cut. So I'm kind of looking at the corners right now. You got 5 guys on this roster. I'm expecting somebody else is going to get picked up from now until week 1.
Yeah, you look at it, you got your starters. You got Austin, Desir, Arthur Millette, Brian Poole, Quincy Wilson. I'm surprised Quincy Wilson made it based on how bad, reportedly how subpar his camp was. But I expect changes as well. I mean, I think there's definitely going to make moves here. They have to. And the practice squad, I think some of these guys like Guidry will be on that. Harrison, like you said, this whole money thing is interesting.
Yeah, but the thing with, guys like Guidry and some of the other undrafted free agents is it's a big risk when you have some talent like that. And it's not just us that are talking about it. There's some respected guys around the league that are saying, these were some, pretty talented prospects, a little bit raw, and they need some time to develop, but still have some talent there. So you're taking a big risk when your roster already has a lot of holes, trying to pass these guys through waivers when you don't really have anybody that's, solidified right now at corner. So
we'll see. And this is where the lack of a preseason benefits the New York Jets, because if you control your media and you control the stories that are being generated, you can undermine a player's abilities or his performance in camp, not tell nobody because there's no tape on him, dude. Like, say all these players getting cut right now, nobody's seen them. You haven't seen no preseason games. You haven't seen any training camps. You haven't seen nothing. You have no idea what their physical conditioning is. So if you undersell somebody throughout the training camp, not really seeing much out of him, then nobody's going to want him. You get him on your practice squad, and you can do that. So there is a lot of risk. You don't know what you're getting. Like right now, all we see is names. Names we either liked or didn't like prior to the draft or during the draft, or guys we liked last year based on their ability. We don't know what they're part of. But to me, the corner position is still an area where you're like, okay, you could see some movement there. I'm not, Quincy Wilson to me is surprising. I mean, but do you think 5 corners is enough? I mean, that's
and that's why I think they're going to at least claim one more body or have somebody else that maybe is on the practice squad that gets elevated to the active roster by week 1. I don't think they're going to go into week 1 with just 5 corners. That would be a surprise.
Yeah, neither do I. So then, if we're going in alphabetical order here, you go to defensive line, this is just strange. They didn't cut anybody.
No, nobody. Between defensive line and outside linebacker, there's 14 guys on the roster. I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and you have guys, like I said, Henry Anderson, Fotokasi, Franklin Myers, who you talked about in our last video. Bryce Huff, an undrafted guy that we were high on, but
I was going to say we were high on him early, but there hasn't been a word about him throughout training camp. I haven't seen one tweet, one comment, nothing.
But that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, if you control your narrative with the media and you don't give a lot of stories, you could say, hey, listen, we would hope you got, there's a way to play the game. You can play the game if you want to. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So some certain guys there, Nathan Shepard, good to see. But the one guy, and I'm biased, I like Shaq Griffin from the Seattle Seahawks. He got cut today. Explosive guy, good special teamers, which is important when you see the guys they cut in other areas. I mean, if you're looking for explosive guys off the edge, I mean, the Jets should be always looking at that. But I wouldn't mind bringing him in, dude. I mean, not even the phenomenal side story of it. The kid's a player, man. I just like the way he plays the game.
Yeah, anybody that has any kind of speed, athleticism that you can put on the edge opposite Jenkins, why not take a flyer? So I don't think we have anybody right now. I mean, Zuniga, he's just getting back on the practice field.
He'll probably go into the reserve too.
Exactly. So you're looking at what, like, I mean, who are you looking at? Honestly, I mean, Terrell Basham and who else on the outside? Harvey Lange, he made the team, which was a little bit of a surprise. You could see Frankie Louvu out there a little bit. But, I mean, these are all guys that we've seen before, and, you know, I wouldn't mind seeing a fresh face in here.
Yeah, I wouldn't get too tied to a lot of these names. I think, you know, over the next 2-3 days, you're going to see a lot of moves. So, obviously, you go up to that, you know, kicker, Sam Ficken, dude, are we serious with this shit? Like, come on, man. Like, this, like, there's no way you have Halushka out there. You have all these guys out there that are getting signed. Like, they should have a kicking tryout today, tomorrow, every other day. That shouldn't be your final kicker, dude. Like, I don't care what anybody tells me. I'm not buying it.
Well, you shouldn't have waited this long. I mean,
that's been the story of Joe Douglas for kickers.
This was the exact same scenario last year, you know, where we brought in Vedvik right before week 1, and then he was a disaster. So I really don't know what to think about kicker. But
yeah, I know what I think about it. We should get a different one. Yep. So you're looking at linebacker. Linebacker's interesting because James Burgess was cut, and the depth the Jets have an inside linebacker. Interesting. Even with Owasu or Wasi, whatever you say his name, he's probably gonna be out for 5-6 weeks. He'll probably go on the IR. But you have Cashman, you have Hewitt, you have Avery Williamson. They have guys they like there. I guess Burgess was kind of guy. I like Burgess. I like the way he played. He was a little banged up. Yeah. Were you surprised he was cut?
I wasn't, and that's why I said on Tuesday night he was one of the guys that I was kind of thinking was on the edge, because I think at inside linebacker, that's a position you can afford to subtract from a little bit when you have 3 guys that could be on the field. Cashman's one of your better coverage linebackers. Hewitt, you know, he's had that role for a couple of years now as a backup special teams player who can start if needed. And the fact that you restructured Avery Williamson's deal, he's not going anywhere this year either. Yeah. So, you know, the fact you're getting Owasu back in a couple of weeks, he's probably going to be your next man up. So I think Burgess was just kind of the odd man out there.
Yeah, no, it's true. So you look at, you know, Jordan Jacobs coming back is, you know, he's obviously going to be one of your best pass rushers, your most established pass rusher. And I think you could say you hope to get 8-9 sacks out of him this year, maybe even 10. If you can stay healthy all year long. Like you said, Frankie Louvu, there's not really anything. Long snapper. I mean, we want to talk about long snappers here.
Not really.
No. Guy's been here forever. Offensive line. Now we're
Jonathan Harrison. What the hell? Shout out to Angelo in Arizona. I think he was the one that called that on Tuesday night. I did not see that one coming at all.
Neither did I. Yep. And here's the interesting part is now the way the Jets are set up, when they got rid of Andrews as well, currently, as we speak now on September 5th, they have no backup center.
Yep.
Your thoughts?
Surprising. Once they cut Harrison, I figured, all right, Andrews is probably a lock to make the team now. They saw more in him as a backup center or a rotational guard. He was filling in a little bit for Lewis and Ben Rotten when they were hurt. So I thought he was probably, you know, the next man up. He was going to make the roster. Now that both of them are cut, you're probably looking at waivers unless you're really confident in a guy like McDermott or somebody like that backing up, which I don't think so, or unless you're going to move Adoga to the inside or you think Clark can play. I think you kind of have to pick up somebody.
And Harrison wouldn't bother me a little bit. I was like, he's a versatile guy. He's a quality guy. He's a leader in the locker room.
Yep.
Yeah, and he does all the right things, says all the right things. He plays hard. And when he got a chance to play, he was never a liability. And he's versatile. Like, that's kind of like, if you look at Joe Douglas's mold of what he wants as a lineman, you'd think Harrison would be one of those guys. Now, there's the money factor, which we talked about earlier on. How much cap space do you need if you're not going to spend it? You have, what, $36 million?
Well, if they're actually tied up a little bit with money and they want to roll over more into next year.
Yeah, but at the price, at what price? Like, at what point do you get where you're making a risk? Like, what if one of your starters go down and your backup sucks? Especially at, let's be honest, center position is important. We've learned this firsthand by seeing the Colin Baxters and the Wesley Johnsons, all the other shit we dealt with over the years. You know, like even Spencer Long. Like you've seen it.
Jonathan Harrison bailed them out of that one too.
Yeah, so like, you know, at some point you keep that depth. You keep that a guy that knows your system, been there. Sam Darnold already has chemistry with him. They work together. Like those little things, especially if you get your backup center this week and it's not somebody you already know, the guy's going to have, 4 days to get used to your offense, and then you're week 1. Like the thing people aren't really talking about is the transition of we're now in game week now. You're a week away from the season starting. So you want to tinker with your offense and tinker with the roster, that's fine. But if shit happens on Sunday when the pads start popping and you bring in your backup that's completely useless, the dynamic, the trickle down from that is significant. So for me, keeping Harrison makes a lot of sense just because of Sam, dude. Like that's kind of like Is that little money you're saving worth risking Sam if McGovern goes down?
No, not really. And again, I think this isn't really a popular opinion, but I think this is kind of a punt year for the Jets, or at least an evaluative year, if you want to put it in nicer terms.
That's a dangerous game to play, man.
It is what it is. I mean, I don't want it to be that, but based off the moves that they've made, based off of the amount of cap space that they have, if you're genuinely trying to improve this roster, you've got $35 million right there to spend right now, and you're not using it. So how much of a priority is it to surround Sam with more talent?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like this year that's the goal. This year is an evaluative year for a lot of young guys that are on this team, and I think they're going to make a lot of important decisions after this year, which sucks. And a guy like Harrison, like you said, great leader, Walter Payton Man of the Year last year. No reason to cut him, especially when he knows Sam, he knows the offense. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and like you'll learn a lot about all these rumors based on how the Jets handle your third wave of free agency this week. You know, what guys on practice squad are you signing? What free agents are you going after? Are there like how they handle their business? You'll learn a little bit more. But the way they handle offensive line is a little bit weird.
Well, I was going to say, another possibility is the fact that they just didn't want to give him that guaranteed money, and they'll want to bring him back on the practice squad on, a reduced rate, and they're going to take that risk.
I mean,
especially with, the expanded practice squads, the fact that they can elevate guys and send them back a couple times without getting claimed. I think they're going to try and approach things differently this year.
Like, I'm not going to overreact too much until they get through like Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, and they say, okay, what's our final roster? We'll do another video. We'll talk about it. But right now, the way they're handling backup center is a little bit risky, in my opinion. But again, I'm just a fan.
I agree.
So what the hell do I know? The next position, we went through offensive line, punter, who cares? Quarterbacks.
We're going to disagree on this one, but go ahead. I'll let you vent, and then
I'm not going to vent. I mean, you have your backup quarterback most likely can't play till week 3. So for the next couple of weeks, you got to figure out how you want to back up Sam Darnold. What they did was
James Morgan.
Dude, you can't be for real, man.
You invested a 4th-round pick in him, so you obviously see some talent. And like I just said, this is an evaluative year. So if Sam goes down in the next 2 to 3 weeks, if that happens, then you let this kid get a little experience.
And you just mail the games in. Like, who cares? We're just going to lose.
What's the difference between James Morgan, David Fales, Mike White, whoever?
They all suck. They shouldn't.
Exactly.
I'm not saying you should have Matt Moore or somebody else in it for weeks.
That's what I'm saying. If it's not Flacco coming in to back up Sam, whoever else you get, it's probably not going to make a difference. It's probably not going to make a difference.
How much they're so enamored with Flacco so much they're okay with being in this position. Like they're that.
Flacco.
But I'm saying you're just saying in theory he misses the first 3 games. You're willing to risk 3 games with no backup quarterback just so you can have Flacco for the rest of the season. Like, why not have another veteran here? Like, I don't think. What has David Fales done to make you feel confident? Like, oh, you know what? He could back up Sam with no problem. Especially with the COVID concerns, injuries, all this other stuff. Like, there's so many things you got to worry about. Especially with the offensive line being rebuilt, a blown assignment. One hit on Sam Darnold, he's out.
I think it was Gase that mentioned a few days ago that the team might even consider doing like a quarantine quarterback, like somebody on the practice squad that stays away from the rest of the team. It wouldn't shock me if Mike White or David Fales or somebody like that.
So you have 4 quarterbacks on the roster. That's a great idea.
Well, one's on the practice squad. You're not going to have him on the active roster.
You bring him up on Sunday.
You might not. You might just have Morgan out there.
Dude, I will roast this organization if they do that.
For 3 weeks, why not?
Because it's about winning.
Is David Fales really making the difference, or any other veteran that you bring in right now with the Matt Moore? Are they really making the difference?
Yes.
With roster in this offense?
You don't think they would?
Are they beating Buffalo? Are they beating the Niners?
Dude, is the goal to have the best chance to win? A guy that's actually played in the NFL can actually run it. Like, it's too late now. Like, this should have been done weeks ago.
If this was a win now season, I would completely agree. But
the goal is to win every game, though. Like, this should have been
based off the decisions that we've made this offseason. That's not the case.
Like, the thing
when you have $35 million sitting there in cap space, you can't tell me that your number one priority this year is to win. You can't tell me that. This is an evaluative year, and James Morgan is a piece that you just invested a 4th-round pick in. So on the off chance that Sam gets hurt, it's going to be an opportunity for Morgan.
Jesus Christ. I mean, I think it's going to be what they're going to do is they're going to keep 3. They'll put David Fales in a practice squad because nobody's going to claim him because we all know that he's not any good.
Exactly.
And then they call him up on Sunday. He's the backup quarterback, and that's going to be just a waste of time. So it's just – I
just think whoever the backup is, it's not going to make a difference. If Sam goes down, we're fucked regardless. So.
And I think – but see, my problem is this should have been addressed weeks ago. Like, like the Flacco thing made sense until you realize that he could be out for 3 weeks. And it's like, all right, you have a backup – like, I don't know, whatever. I mean, whatever. Running backs, Le'Veon Bell, Frank Gore, P. Ryan is hurt. I'm not sure have you heard how long he's out for? Have they said?
No, but it's a lower ankle sprain, so you would think at least a couple weeks maybe, but I don't know. I was a little bit surprised that they cut Josh Adams, to be honest.
Yeah, well, he's banged up too, so I'm not sure
Yeah.
how healthy he was. You could see them maybe adding somebody here, I would think, right? Because especially if the rookie's hurt, then you can't just go 2 running backs.
Yeah, and that also kind of raises a question. You brought in Pete Guerrero on 2 separate occasions. You barely gave him an opportunity.
Yeah, Christ.
Kind of like Ross Martin, just at a different position. I mean,
yeah, it's just
you brought him in twice. You barely gave him an opportunity. I mean, there must have been enough there that you said, all right, this kid has some talent. He led the FCS in rushing, I think, his last year in college. Yep. So, why not give him an opportunity at least? But
at least get him on the practice squad or something.
Yep.
Safety position, nothing too surprising here. Ashton Davis, everybody loves him. Marcus May, hopefully he's healthy. This calf injury is becoming a little bit concerning. He hasn't practiced in, 3 or 4 days. McDougal, everybody likes. But that's it, dude. 3 safeties.
I don't mind that at all, but, you look at the guys that they cut, Matthias Farley, Bennett Jackson, along with Nate Hairston and a few other guys that Joe Douglas brought in towards the end of last year.
Yep.
These are all like little additions that he was making that were expected to at least fill in some depth roles and maybe make an impact. And a year later, they're all gone already. So it is what it is. But again, this is the time of year where you're trying to, search the waiver wire and find some guys who can replace them at a higher rate. So we'll see who he brings in.
There's a lot of safeties available. There's a lot of good safeties that were released. So that when they didn't cut any defensive linemen, I think when they do start cutting him or the injury reserve comes in, I think they sign a safety. I think they bring somebody in here. I think this is too light. You need more, especially when you're making a case to have all 3 of these guys play at the same time. We've talked about it. A lot of 3 safety sets. Well, you can do 3 safety sets and get no backups. So this will be a position where you're going to have to get somebody else, whoever it is, to come in for that. Offensive line, we went through that. Becton, Adoga, who's been banged up. Obviously, George Fant. And the weird thing is, dude, this is the strangest thing about George Fant is nobody's talked about him.
Not a word.
Not a word.
That could be a good thing. That could be a good thing.
Yeah,
he's not getting beat at all, not making any penalties, so he's just kind of flying under the radar. At least that's what I hope.
I mean, he pretty much beat out Adoga, who he should, because he's making $8-9 million a year. He should do that. But that's been
that's why I don't even think that was a legitimate competition. You give a guy $8.5 million, he's going to be your week 1
Joe
starter.
Douglas, like, I paid you, you're playing. Yep.
Exactly. If he sucks, I could see maybe some rotation happening, like in the middle of the season. But week 1, he's going to be the starter.
Yep. An interesting position here, tight end position. This one's I found real interesting because you got Griffin, who's coming off an injury, who said he may never feel the same again.
Yeah.
Strange comment.
Yeah.
Chris Herndon, who had a little injury but back. So you have 2 guys that are kind of like, then you have Wesco, and that's it. Now, you were kind of hoping if you're going to go with this, running, you want to have that big mauling tight end. You want to have that big, which it could be Fant. It could be maybe how they do it. But, we don't have a fullback on the roster. The tight end position, your thoughts on it right now?
I kind of like Trayvon Wesco, to be honest. I know he was touted earlier in camp being one of the more improved players, showing some versatility. He can play fullback if needed. So I think he might have an expanded role in the offense this year, and I think that's probably why they feel comfortable only keeping 3. But I was a little bit surprised that they didn't keep Daniel Brown as that blocking tight end if they did want to have an approach of more ground and pound, but not overly concerned, I guess. I mean, he wasn't like an impact player or anything like that. So
yeah, that is interesting. Now, our
favorite position.
The one that we probably spent endless hours on over the years, wide receiver position. So Moncrief's gone, DJ Montgomery's gone. Like I mentioned earlier, Cager's gone. George Campbell, Chase on, like his name is. They're all gone.
Yep.
Been interesting. Jeff Smith and Vincent Smith are both hurt. So basically, you have 5 receivers, dude. And obviously, Crowder, Berrios, Chris Hogan, Mims, Perryman, who's not been practicing because of his knee, and that's it.
Well, so both of the Smiths, obviously, they're out for a couple of weeks. Perriman hasn't practiced. Mims is just getting back to practice.
Yep.
So your only 3 receivers are pretty much that have been practicing all of camp are Berrios, Crowder, and Chris Hogan.
Yep.
So that is not ideal heading into week 1.
Not at all.
That's all I'll say on that.
Yeah, so you're obviously going to hope that, Cager and these guys – I think what probably hurt Cager, he got hurt.
Yeah.
So he missed some time. The lack of, training camp or lack of preseason games probably hurt him too. He's probably an excellent, it's weird though because other teams are tweeting about him as well. Like I saw the Giants writers talking about him. Like if other teams, like that's where you're risking it. Where when you keep 14 defensive linemen and you let a guy like Cager get out there with teams that are like certain teams like the 49ers are starving for talent, you never know what could happen. But he seems like an excellent practice squad candidate. But I mean, 5 receivers, dude, and 3 of them have been banged up. That's not Not good at all.
Yeah, the Cager move definitely surprised me a little bit. And even Chason, just because he was, coming on a little bit in camp, he's got some return ability. But you have some names out there that just got released also between Deontay Burnett, who we talked about on Tuesday's show, Mohamed Sanu, who the Patriots released, Hakeem Butler, who was, a Twitter favorite, fourth-round pick of the Cardinals, 6'6". And even, I don't think they're going to go this route, but, Douglas likes him, Adam Gase likes him, Alshon Jeffrey is supposed to make about $9 million this year. You have all that cap space, so maybe that's an option. I mean, he praised Gase in the offseason, so that's one of Gase's guys.
That's our downfall.
Yeah, exactly. So
There's
some names out there. I think they're going to bring in somebody. They're not just going to go in with the five that they have right now that are healthy. It's just a matter of who they bring in. So
yeah, and this is kind of where we talked about in the past, where you having a Demaryius Thomas already in the fold, already here, already knows the offense. That would kind of definitely benefit you. Like you said, having 5 receivers, and now if you're a Jets fan, what you got to do is you got to watch these practice reports and see how is Mims progressing and what the hell is going on with Perryman. Because, what they said was a one-day thing is now over a week. His swelling is good one day, bad the other, and he's got a history of knee problems.
That's what was really concerning. Once you heard Gase, kind of come out and say, I got that one wrong, and that, some days he's fine, other days it's swelling up, and he has the history going back to Baltimore. He's supposed to be your number one wideout right now, and you can't depend on him at this point.
No, so I would expect some kind of roster reshuffling there too. There's a lot of guys out there, and you see what happens. I mean, the next 2 days is going to be interesting. And this is where, in theory, this is where Joe Douglas earns his money. This is why he's here. This is why we spent all that money in the front office, all these guys. Like, this is it, because you separate yourself from everybody else by having all the facts that we don't know about. They have these guys on the radar. You obviously haven't seen any film on them, but you got to kind of hope that they're in shape and can play.
But even less than the guys he picks up now, the guys that he picked up last year, like Berrios and John Franklin Myers that have been here for a year, you want to expect something out of those guys. They know the system. They've been around. Like, those guys should be able to contribute more so than maybe somebody that you bring in, in the next couple of days. But I don't know. Yeah,
it's so weird. You see some of the Eagles cuts, and it's like a lot of their draft picks and players, and you're like, are we going to ignore those stories?
I was going to say, and they're thin at cornerback too, and they're cutting corners left and right. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. Not like a huge surprise, I guess, with the cuts. I mean, I think Harrison probably qualifies. Nate Harrison, a little bit kind of eyebrow raising, but other than that, it remains to be seen what we have. I mean, I think you're going to see. I think more surprising things could probably happen over the next 48 hours than today.
That's a possibility, but I just don't think it was really possible to have a whole lot of surprises when your roster is kind of as thin as it is already. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. Just think about it. We're like a week away, another day away from being a week away from the Bills.
Yeah.
Who got a pretty solid team. So I think the spread is 7 or 8 right now.
Is it up to 8? Last I saw, I thought it was 6, but it could be going up. It wouldn't shock me if it did.
I was drinking when I saw it. So maybe it is only 6. I don't know.
I'm sure it went up.
But is there any guys that you saw that was cut that are kind of high on your radar? Like Rasul Douglas, the Eagles, a guy.
Yep. Sidney Jones, another one who's got some injury history, though. But yeah, definitely the wide receiver position. I think that has to be the priority, finding some weapons on offense. Hakeem Butler, I think, is probably tops on my list because, I was a big fan of him coming out of the draft last year. Yep. He's got the size. He could be a red zone option. He's got speed as well. Deontay Burnett, I was a big fan of him in camp last year also. I wouldn't mind bringing him back. Sam from USC. Other than that, I mean, Sanu maybe, but he's getting a little bit older, so I don't know if they want to go down that route. Yeah, I think wide receiver has to be the priority.
Yeah, that's the same thing. Wide receiver, corner. If you can find like a guy like, special teams contributors. Burgess was good there. You kind of want to find that's kind of like an area we haven't talked about at all, other than me bashing kickers, is the returners. And that's the thing. If you have Ashton Davis returning, is that another responsibility he has? If they go 3 safeties, there's a lot of moving parts that we haven't talked about, especially returners.
And that's why the Chason move kind of surprised me a little bit. I thought he might have a role, returning kicks or something like that, or even Javelin Guidry with his speed. Hopefully those guys are able to make it to the practice squad because I think there's a possibility both could get claimed. So we'll see.
Could be interesting, man. I guess tomorrow's the practice squad's at 1:00 they announce it?
I think so, yeah.
So we have video do that, and then we'll do a video just when they make moves and figure things out,
Sounds good.
Good talking to you, man.
Yep. Do it again tomorrow.
Yes, sir. That was a long one.